When did a gut feeling save your life? I was a young, naive freshman in college and had basically no experience talking to boys. This guy had sat next to me for my whole 2 hours psych lecture and casually talked to me the whole time. Just little comments about the lecture. Showing me things on his laptop. Innocent stuff. When lecture ended and we got outside, it was pouring. Like. To this day I've seen rain like that maybe twice in my life. Rain that would physically hurt to walk in. He offered me a ride and I said yes. But as he was pulling the car up I thought to myself, don't get in, and took off running to my dorm. Saw him on the news a few months later for upping 2 women. I was on my way to work once and as the light turned green and I was about to go through, felt something tell me to wait, so I slowed a bit and as did a car zoom through the red light of that intersection. I'm sure if I just went through I would have been hit. I'm sure a lot of people have stories like that. And it's always amazing creepy to hear about such instances. Semicolon. Was very ill. Woke up to vomit and made it to the sink. Thought about rinsing it and go back to bed. But felt like I should turn the light on. Did. And it was full of blood. If I'd gone back to bed I would have bled to death in my sleep. I got a fun ride to the hospital at 2 AM. Luckily that bleed finally got me onto the transplant list. And 2 years later I got my nice pre-owned piece of liver. The 30th of September will be my 8th liverversary. Yay. Several times I've hesitated entering an intersection to find that someone would run the red light at a speed that would put me in the hospital. My dad's story. My dad was probably in his 20s, he's in his 50s now. He was at the bar drinking with his friends and they were all getting ready to leave. But something told my dad stay for another drink. So he did. Well, later that night traveling home he found out the bridge he usually crosses to get home collapsed around the same time he would have originally been crossing it. Not my gut feeling, but my mom's. She wouldn't let me go out of town for a weekend with my best friend. We were supposed to go to an overnight picnic, where her older, responsible guy friend would escort us in his safe new car. My mom categorically refused. And my teenage self became hysterical to the point of slamming doors and yelling profanities at her. The next day I find out my best friend and another girl were decapitated in a car accident. The guy drove drunk while I too fast on a country road. The car hit the gravel on the side of the road. And the car flipped a few times before hitting a tree that ripped the car in half. My best friend's parents had to identify her remains through jewelry they found at the scene. She was 17. I was 16. My mom saved my life that day. R.I.P. Anna. I don't know if it was a gut feeling so much as good timing, but as a kid me and my brother shared bunk beds. I had the bottom bunk. Every night I would get up to get myself a drink and go back to bed. I was maybe 6 when one night I get up to get my feckin' juice and I barely had stepped out of our bedroom when there was a loud cracking sound. This woke my parents and the 3 of us rushed back to find that the wood supporting the top bunk mattress had split and was now stabbing jaggedly into my mattress and pillow. A few seconds earlier or a minute later I would have been asleep there. Also my brother didn't wake up the whole time. And he would have gotten away with it if it wasn't for that meddling juice crave of yours. A gut feeling saved my life. But it wasn't my gut feeling. My mom knew something was wrong with me as a baby. Even after the local doctors told her nothing was wrong when she took me 23 times. Deep South doctors. She didn't relent. And trusted her gut. And drove hours away to an actual city in our state where they found my cancer. Too much later and I'd have been dead. My so thankful for my mother. But trusting her gut and sticking with it. My husband, me, and our 2 young children were visiting my parents. They live in a rural farming area. There are steep hills. Fenced acreages right next to the road. We left late, the kids were asleep. We seat belted the kids in the back seat of the small car. Driving down one of the steep hills and around a curve I get an anxious feeling and say out loud, "It's a wonder we have never seen any cows loose out here." Then we start up another steep hill and I say, can you imagine if a black cow was out on a night like this? My husband immediately slows down and at the bottom of the hill a black cow was standing in the middle of the road in our lane. We were stunned. We slowly drove around the cow and looked for an opened gate or downed fence. We didn't see anything. It was surreal. Looking back, I have said it was sixth sense or divine intervention. Bovine intervention? I wish I could go back and see the times where small decisions I didn't realize saved my life. It didn't exactly save my life, but I did avoid getting robbed. When I was in high school, I was supposed to hang out with some friends after school. They were taking a long time to come out of class, and I just had this feeling that I should home. I tried to message them, but didn't get a reply, so I went home. Later that day I heard from one of them that a group of guys came up to them as they exited the school and asked for their phones and money. Luckily they didn't get hurt since one of the guys had a knife. I felt bad for them, but I was glad that wasn't there because anything could have happened. Why would you rob a high schooler? I never had more than like $5 on me all through school. Not me, but a family member. During 9/11 they worked at an office job on one of the mid-level floors, pretty high up still, of the second tower hit. After the plane hit the first tower, the office workers were told to evacuate the building, I guess in case of the other building collapsing or fire hazards. After a short moment, the company ordered the workers to go back up because nothing else was happening, and they needed to make that dosh. While most all of them went up, my family member stayed below because they had a gut feeling something bad was going to happen. A lot of their friends and co-workers didn't make it since their office was so high up when the plane hit. Not really a life-saving moment, but avoiding a visit to the hospital. I was staying the night at my grandma's house and I had to get up to use the restroom. I was walking in the dark and I stopped. I had this bad feeling, so I switched on the light. Right in my pathway a couple feet away was a baby scorpion. I had a huge chance of getting stung. I was driving my family in our sub and was stopped at a light to make a left turn. I get the green arrow and start to hit the gas when I hear my husband scream stop. I slam on the brakes and a giant pickup truck runs the red from our left and screeches to a stop 30 yards past the intersection. I definitely would have been killed and my entire family injured. So we all take a deep breath and I tell my husband I hadn't seen the truck, so it's a good thing he did. He says he didn't see the truck. Then why did you yell stop? I ask him. He says he didn't yell stop. The kids say no one yelled anything. To this day I swear I heard an audible voice telling me to stop, but no one else did. Relaying a friend's story. He was living in London and about to catch his usual bus when he felt like a cigarette. Just as he lit up he could see his bus pull around the bend. He considered throwing out his ciggy but thought, bugger it. I really want my smoke. Next bus was 6 minutes away. So he didn't board his bus and watched it drive a bit down the road when suddenly he was knocked to the ground by a powerful unseen force. His bus was the victim of a terrorist bombing and exploded just after the stop. I was at a bonfire and had planned to get a ride home with one of my friends. I got really anxious right before we left and ended up staying at the bonfire. On his way home, my friend had hit a light pole and it ended up falling and crushing the passenger seat, right where I would have been sitting. He was completely fine. I was off work the day of the Boston bombing and wanted to go shopping. I had an errand to run in Cambridge across the river, but I wanted to go to a store right where the bomb ended up going off. I was just about to go there when something in me told me I should do my errand first. Lo and behold, as I cross the river, I get a flurry of texts from people asking if I'm okay. I was driving up Highway 100 in Minneapolis and going a bit fast. I suddenly had this feeling that I should slow down a bit. A few seconds later a wheel dropped right in front of my car and bounced over me. I'm fairly certain that if I hadn't slowed down, it would have gone through my windshield. 15ish years ago. I'm 17. Suddenly and for no apparent reason I feel abject terror on a demolition site. Without warning I dived to my left and tackled my boss out of the way. I didn't see anything. I didn't hear anything. Not until the 3-ton wrecking ball landed exactly where we were just standing. I still have an open invitation to dinner with him and his family. It took me a second to realize you weren't 2 years old when this happened. I decided to call my mom. I didn't have any reason to and I knew that she was heading to work. So the chances of her answering her phone was slim. But I still wanted to call. She was breathing really heavy and was just speechless. She said that if I didn't call her, she probably would have gotten into a really bad accident. She said that she was driving on autopilot. And for some reason, despite there being a red light, she just kept going, not really thinking. She slowed down because she noticed her phone ringing, and by that time cars were honking at her because she was getting too far into the road. I was in college and hanging at my buddy's place on the south side of campus. It was maybe 2 in the morning and I was heading home to the north side of campus. It was foggy as hell. Maybe 50 feet of visibility. And dark. As I was walking, I saw 4 or 5 people walking in the middle of the street pass under a streetlight foaming towards me. They were spread across the whole street. I turned around and walked back to my buddy's apartment and slept on a couch. Found out the next night that it was gang initiation season and there were several random beatings that night. I was volunteering at an annual fair at my school and I was helping with the balloon popping game. The one where you get darts and throw them at balloons to pop. When I was blowing up some balloons, something told me to move position. Not even 5 seconds later a dart went flying right where I was standing. While I admit I wouldn't have died, it did save me from a lot of pain. This happened twice. This happened twice. Your school really needs to either stop the dart game or fix up an enclosure. Jesus. When I woke up and felt the need to go to the ER even though I couldn't explain what was wrong. When we got there, the cauterization from my tonsillectomy ruptured and I lost 1/6 of my blood in about 20 minutes. Not my gut feeling, but my gran told me this. My grandparents live in fairly rural area. More so back in the day. When my mum was about 3, she was in a pram and my gran was pushing her along the side of the road towards town. My mum had been wriggling about and wanting to walk for ages, and eventually she made so much fuss my gran stopped to let her out. So mum had her hands on the pram and was helping to push it when a tractor pulling a trailer passed them on the hill heading up back towards the farm. Granny suddenly had the urge to grip my mum's shoulders really tight, and when she turned round the trailer had come loose from the tractor and was rolling back down the hill, gathering such a speed it ripped the pram right out of their hands and off the road. So I guess my gran's tiny action saved 6 lives, hers, mum's, my auntie who wasn't born at this point, mine. When I was about 5 years old, my mum used to drive us around in an old beat up car with no driver's license. This was in the 90s. Still very bad, but the laws were more lax back then, anyways. Every time she drove us somewhere I would sit in the middle seat at the back with no seatbelt. Until one day, I suddenly got the urge to sit in the front passenger seat. My mum made me wear a seatbelt since I was at the front, and it was about 10 minutes into the drive when my mum got blinded by a van driver's headlights and crashed us straight into a concrete bollard on the side of the street. Luckily no one was harmed. But it still gives me chills when I think about the fact that this was the only time I ever wore a seatbelt prior to the accident. I have always worn my seatbelt since and get so mad when my friends don't bother. Seatbelts save lives, people. A friend was having a party at a popular casino that has a resort. Myself and a few friends show up and we see a cop and an employee enter the elevator as we enter the other one next to it. As soon as I saw that, I had a bad feeling. We get to the same floor and try to find the room that the party is held in. We see the cop next to room, talking to the woman that filed the complaint. And just as a friend was about to knock on the door, I tell her out loud, "Nah, that's not the room. We're on the wrong floor." The cop stopped us and asked what we were up to, and we told him we were visiting a friend but got the rooms mixed up. He let us going, and turns out the room that we were about to go into was the room my friends were having the party in. Lots of underage people drinking weed and a noise complaint. People with weed on them got a citation and they're banned from going again. Dodge a bullet there. He knew. A gut feeling about a girl saved me from a shitty marriage. When I was a student, I was living alone at the ground floor in a small building. My upstairs neighbor was a psychotic guy who started to have a crush on me. A few times, I woke up in the middle of the night with him screaming my name and banging on the wall. I was so scared. I could feel the guy was really dangerous, so in 24H I decided I couldn't stay in this place and moved to some friend house while I was trying to do my relocation. 2 months after this, he killed a girl my age, really look alike, with a gun. Semicolon. I can't stop the feeling to think that it was supposed to be me. But on the other hand, I'm so glad I took this decision that quickly. I knew by the look in this eye that the guy was really dangerous. It didn't save my life, but it saved my dad's life. I was driving through a busy road and I see a driver pulling up to a stop sign on one of the in-roads. Except he doesn't seem to be slowing down. I swerved him and ran to the left lane. I stopped in the middle of the road, honked once and drove off. A few minutes after that, for the first time ever, my dad acknowledged that I might be a good driver. All he said was, "You can drive, eh?" That was a lot for him to say. Not mine, but my friends. Maybe. We were fking around with black powder. I don't know where the FCK he got this black powder from, but it was like wrapped up in some kind of tape log. He bent it in half to sort of crack it open and was trying to light it off, like just straight on the black powder with a lighter. It was sorta just fizzling and not doing much. Well, he took the lighter to it again for a few seconds, backed off, then was going to go back at it again, and I stuck my arm in front of him holding him back and just wait. Then it went up in flames almost immediately after that. He was like, "Whoa." Don't know how I knew. I just knew. We were like 14 years old. I was about to kill myself. I had just experienced something so traumatizing and overwhelming that I thought I had no other option. I was also extremely depressed at the time. I locked myself in the bathroom and drew myself a bath to cut myself in so I could keep the cut underwater to prevent it from scabbing over so I would bleed out. I picked a large vein and started at it. Once I had made a really large cut, my gut told me to stop. I do not know why. Because prior to this moment I was set on ending it all. But for some reason I felt a huge sense of dread and I stopped cutting. Got out of the bath, put on a towel and ran to my dad crying. He took me to the hospital immediately and I got 6 stitches along with a sentence to the psych ward. I could have died that day. I'm glad I didn't. My life is a lot better now. For the record. Not me, but my mom. We were at our school track and my mom was walking, but my sister and I were playing. We were in middle school, so we weren't that young, but we still weren't paying too much attention. My mom noticed a man watching us and following us whenever we would move around, so she decided to take us home and reported it to the police. He matched the description exactly of a known and wanted kidnapper.